Next, we will hear from an industry leader that is integrating circular principles into its core business model. She will explore how innovation is driving a circular business transformation at Henkel, from product design to end-of-life solutions, and why circularity is not only an environmental necessity, but also a long-term business opportunity. Please join me in welcoming the Chief Sustainability Officer at Henkel, Ulrike Sapiro.
Thank you very much and good morning. I'll keep it very simple. I will not have charts, so it's just me. I apologize. We keep it very easy. But good morning. I hope you hear me, and thank you for having me today here at this great introduction lineup. This convention comes at a very critical time to bring stakeholders from across value chains and different value chains together to exchange solutions and ideas, I think. And I'm so therefore very happy to add another voice of business to this introduction. And I want to use the framing of the World Business Council for Sustainable Development for my few words, which says that a net zero, nature-positive world cannot be delivered without significantly growing the circular economy. And for me, in my role as Chief Sustainability Officer at a company that is very internationally engaged, this is really the motto for how we want to drive things. But I also think for any business that is particularly having a strong base in Europe, which is, as we've heard, a continent that is not exactly very endowed with own energy or mineral resources, in the core territory, the relevance of this statement goes well beyond the sustainability narrative. And as we see geopolitical turmoil at the moment unfolding around us, moving from linear to circular, I truly believe is also a case of resource independence, resilience building, and competitiveness for businesses. Not just for countries, it's also for industry and every company itself. So let's have a look, where are we on this today? On one side, we love to look at the good news. And so we hear that today 43% of the energy produced inside Europe comes from renewable sources. It's a great proof point, it's a wonderful progress. But what we can't ignore is the reality that still the majority of our energy is imported from outside, more than 63%. And that the energy types with the largest share in our overall mix are still fossil. Most importantly, oil and petroleum and natural gas resources, over 50%. And as we know, these are precisely the resources that are most intensely required in the chemicals and materials industries, including, of course, as we know, the plastics materials that we're going to talk about a lot in the program, including also materials for constructions, for electronics, for automotive, etc., that we'll have on the agenda the next 2 days. So it's not just a very lofty statement, the connection between decarbonization and circular economy. It is really right here and right now that we have to talk about how we can solve our challenges to make us stronger here in Europe in the future. And at Henkel, we have the privilege of touching all these different industries and their challenges at the same time. And nowhere else do we have more of an opportunity to bring our purpose as a pioneer at heart for the good of generations to life than through our actions around net zero and circular economy. And perhaps I say a few words about Henkel to illustrate that. On one side, Henkel is known as a consumer goods and home care business. You know our detergents, you know perhaps our hair brands of Schwarzkopf. And with this business, we are a producer and we are a user, predominantly, for example, of packaging material. For example, including around 270,000 tons of plastics every year. And circularity in this business means that we first have to look at avoidance, reducing simply the amount of materials through compaction, through redesigning our packaging, but also by increasing the share of renewable sources of packaging. At the moment, we are around 40% of total packaging materials from renewables. But of course, also increasing the recyclability across the board, where we're currently at about 90%. On the other side, we need to pull from the secondary feedstock market by using recycled content. We've made it and ramped it up to 25% globally for plastics, and we're pushing for all other packaging materials as well. And of course, we need to use our brands to push the market. Our well-known Persil brands are now at 50% recycled content in packaging, and Celan and Pervol at 100% recycled. So we're really pushing to make it also visible to retailers, to consumers, how circular economy is actually playing out on the shelf. On the other side, and I find this much more interesting actually and more potential, is our industrial adhesives and sealants business, which is half of the business. And these are technologies where we are an innovation driver for numerous other industries, like automotive, electronics, apparel, construction, but also, again, the packaging materials industry. So, for example, Henkel Adhesives has been part of the move to paper holders for multi-pack cans, which used to be wrapped in shrink wrap and are now held by cartons and glued onto the carton by adhesives. We've also been part of the move to recyclable labels, recyclable multi-layer packaging, e-commerce packaging, and resealable packaging materials. Henkel Adhesives also has a solution to reduce the shrink wraps around transport packaging, because you can actually glue the boxes on the pallet together as well, instead of only using shrink wrap. So you're reducing at least those amounts. But we're also part of the right to repair. You can also only think about your favorite coffee mug at home that you're gluing together again, perhaps with a super glue, or you can think about debonding solutions in automotive, where you can actually do repairs of individual car parts, like a headlamp, instead of replacing and deconstructing the entire front of the car, if you can debond the glues around and the adhesives around it. And ladies and gentlemen, I bring these examples, of course, partly because I'm quite proud of what Henkel is doing, but also, of course, because we want and we need to hear positive proof points. We want to hear them and we want to exchange them here today, because we want to see that the change that we need is actually already happening, it's practical, and it's actually leading to value. But it's also a vantage point from which I want to use a couple of more minutes to make maybe 3 business side messages from my side for this conference here today. And the first thing is that entrepreneurial thinking and innovation for circular economy can pave the way to market opportunities and sustainability at the same time. They are not mutually exclusive. It's not just one or the other. It is both sides of winning in the marketplace and driving more sustainable practices. Because innovations in this space, they make sense for business, they help resource management, obviously, but they also often reduce costs, at least in the mid to long term. The challenge we have today is to see how do we make the financials work in the short term, and how do we make that work particularly in a climate of economic stress and challenges like today. Secondly, and I think this came up already from the professor of the Fraunhofer, I really endorse that. It's critical that this innovation comes from a circular mindset, that you really are thinking strategically how to connect the dots with your actions across the whole value chain, not just jumping on an opportunistic bandwagon with some individual solution at a time. And that really requires out-of-the-box thinking, that requires challenging the status quo also of how to do things in businesses, how we work in our R&D, how we look at our marketing, and to really say, do we really have an end-to-end strategy in mind? And do we have a commitment to a long-term change strategy? Or is it really just about a quick win and a patch at this moment? And as we've seen as well, the circular value chain has about 5 to 8 links to actually make the two ends meet. A linear, you don't care what's at the other side. But in a circular economy, you need to connect the dots. So every decision we make at our part of that value chain will have repercussions to the rest. And do we really challenge ourselves to think about the signals we give to the entire value chain with each of the decisions we're taking? Because we have a role to play to connect all those links in the chain, and not to do it in isolation. And the third point is, and I come to my last, and which I also believe, I think, is actually the Achilles heel of this whole system right now. and a circular economy vendor, if we like that, in Germany and Europe and the world. And that is the effective and high quality recovery and recycling infrastructure to actually make secondary material value work. We focus a lot on design, we focus a lot on the materials that we put into the cycle, and I think there's a whole quarter of that cycle that we are not quite getting right yet. The overall recycling rate in Europe still hovers around 44%. Packaging material has made it up to 65%, but electronics waste has just nosedived back down to 32%. So really not in the right place yet across all value streams to make it work. And yes, I know some countries like Germany, the Scandinavian countries and a few others, they are on the upper range of that spectrum, but we really only know in a single market and in a very international connected economy, we can only work together, have to work together and make the system better together. So we need to innovate, we need to inspire consumers, and we need to support the infrastructure to make this cycle work together. And for this we need, I feel, really more ambitious, practical, and more outcome-based regulation, like an effective packaging waste directive, smart EPR systems in Europe and the world, paired with financing mechanisms that actually unlock more investment in this space, and a shift of the economic signals away from supporting the linear way of working to the circular way of working. And I believe we also need action on global level. We cannot just sit in our little bubble and fix it all here in Europe. We need to think globally. And so we're really committed to the Global Plastics Treaty as well. And it's in the interest, I truly believe, of all companies to engage in this, because otherwise we end up with very costly and complicated patchworks and small fragmented solutions. So we are very committed in this agenda. We want to be vocal. We want to bring people along. So I hope you will join us, and thank you very much, and have a very, very good convention. Thank you.